A very good evening to everyone who is joining us live right now. Probably I'll give you all a few seconds to come live. So as you come live, I would like to welcome all of you to Thrive from Home webinar series organized by Pick a Book Sri Lanka. My name is Ashintani Veerasinghe and I will be the host for this episode today. Now, talking about this episode today, Thrive from Home is brought to you by Pick a Book Sri Lanka in association with Perera Hussein Publishing House. And as the official event partner, we have One Goal Face. And we're coming to you live from the One Goal Face Facebook page right now. So thank you so much for joining. So as you keep joining, I would first of all like to give you a small introduction about what Pick a Book is and what they do. So it's an impactful movement founded based on social patterns that bloom positively through connecting with readers' community and grow more together towards progress. And their vision is also to change participants' sense of self through wonders of literature and to inspire change. And I'm sure through this episode of Thrive from Home, they will surely reach their vision of inspiring change as well. Now, usually through Pick a Book, we keep on talking about readers and they come present their books. But today, our target market, and we are here to talk about how to write books and how you can get through and align your thoughts to start writing. So if you're somebody who is aspiring to become a writer, or if you're somebody who's already a writer, you are at the right place watching the right episode of Pick a Book Sri Lanka. So thank you for joining. So as we go forward, I would like to introduce our guest today. We have a very special guest to talk about this area of expertise of writing books and publishing. So he is none other than Mr. Sam Pereira. And to give a little bit of introduction about him before he comes and says hello to everyone, he is a renowned publisher in Sri Lanka, one among the best in the country. And he's also the president and partner at Perera Hussein Publishing House. And a lot of people call him Sri Lanka's coolest publisher. Am I right? A very good evening to you, Sam.
Thank you, Ashi. That was a lovely introduction. I think wherever I go, I'm going to engage you to come and introduce me. Hi, everyone from Pick a Book. Nice to see you guys on a Sunday evening. I did a Pick a Book session about a year and a half ago, and that was a lot of fun. And I hope this one will be too.
Yeah, sure. Let's make it all fun. So pleasure is all mine to have you today, Sam, and to have this conversation with you. So to get started, I'm sure you must be wondering what it's all about. So just like I mentioned, we're all stuck at home, working from home during this unprecedented time. So I'm sure your work from home is going well. And this episode is all about thriving from home. How to get started with writing your book. Like I said, if you're somebody who's aspiring to become a writer, or if you're already a writer, this is a conversation that you must get engaged. So when I say you must get engaged, it's all about asking questions and getting engaged. So in the comment section, you can send us your questions. At the end of our conversation, we will open the forum for a Q&A session. With that, to get started, so Sam, to get started, why don't you give us an idea about the lifestyle of a publisher, you being a renowned one?
Thank you. Yes. So even though the title of this session says how to write a book, you know that I can't tell you how to write a book. You know that one. Okay. Yeah. But once you have written your book, then you wonder what to do next. You want to commercialize it or put it on the market, because no one, I mean, let's face it, no one really writes for themselves. They write for someone else. So when you get to that point, then you need to look to publish your book. One thing I will say is that in the last 2 years, and I'm going to count last year also, ever since we went into lockdown, the number of people reaching out to me with new manuscripts has been phenomenal. So I think a lot of us stuck at home, twiddle our thumbs for a little bit. Okay, we get tired of Netflix and we get tired of opera and we get tired of everything else and all the free movies. And then we want to do something creative. And I think many of us have led interesting lives and they think, okay, now we have something to share. Let's put pen to paper and write it down. So I've got lots and lots of manuscripts since last year's lockdown, and I'm delighted. But on the other hand, like you might know, everything is closed. So I'm in a bit of a bind. I'm reading all these superb manuscripts, but I'm deliberately going slow with everything because, okay, writing is a writing is a creative process, and you as a creative will be writing your book. But publishing is a commercial one. Once I get your manuscript, we've turned it into a book, and then I say, what do I do now? I have to take it to a bookshop, but all the bookshops are closed and you're at home. And of course, we sell online, and there are more and more online sellers, but they still don't match the scope of the regular brick and mortar bookshops. So I'm going slow for the moment. Okay. So where shall we begin? So first and foremost, when you're writing a book, there are no rules. You must remember that. You can do what you like. A book can be very, very small, from 10 to 12 pages, or it can run into 600 pages. It's all up to you and what you want to say.
I think, Sam, regarding writing of books, will come into the latter part of our conversation. Just to get started with, I would like to lay the foundation to the people who are watching us right now along the side of your life as a publisher. So taking it forward, what really inspired you to become a publisher, Sam?
That's good. Yeah. So about 20 years ago, so I've been in publishing for about 18 years. And I've always been an avid reader. I read lots and lots ever since. So Sri Lanka has gone through many lockdowns, which you might not remember. When I was growing up, it was called curfew, and you couldn't step out of this house without being shot. Okay, so I've been stuck at home for a long time. And what you do is read. And I've read a lot ever since I was a child. By the time I got to be an adult, I read lots of books by non-Sri Lankans saying what Sri Lanka is all about and what Sri Lankans are all about. But there were very few books written by Sri Lankans. And I wanted to see a Sri Lankan point of view. I want to know what we think about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, and what our stories are. And because I wanted to do that, I got together with my partner and wife, Amina, and then we started this publishing company. We had no background in publishing per se, but we thought, yes, we'll look at that, and we went for that one. Having said that, I used to work in a library. It was a very big library, so I have some experience in that domain, and we have published books also from the library.
Oh, wow. So I think you have grown up with books, if I say that. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm surrounded by books all the time.
Oh, nice. Look, good to hear that. Now, you are a publisher. You anyway mentioned at the start of the conversation, you don't write books, but have you ever considered writing a book, being a publisher by reading so many manuscripts and taking it forward? Have you ever considered writing a book?
Yes, I have. I have to tell you. But then I don't have the patience, and I'm not a creative in that sense. Okay. Now, let me put it this way. We all have pens, but we are not all writers. I think you and I, maybe we sign our name on a check or whatever it is, but we can't sit down and write a check. But I do tell stories. And once I saw this fabulous exhibition by an artist named Alex Stewart. He's an English artist who had been to Sri Lanka. So I wrote to him and said, listen, Alex, the next time you're over here in Sri Lanka, I'll tell you stories and you can illustrate them and we'll do a book. And I did a series of 3 books with him. This is Alex's artwork. It's really quite whimsical and fabulous. Okay. And the first book was called How the Squirrel Got His Stripes.
Oh, okay.
And you're wondering about the title. But I know in your house, in your garden, there are lots of little squirrels that run around. And they all have 3 black stripes on their back. And I know that you always wondered how they got them. So when I showed Alex a squirrel and I told him that, he said, yes, Sam, how did the squirrel get his stripes? So then I told him the story. So I have told stories for 3 books and they have come out and they did very, very well.
Okay.
And now I'm talking to another artist to do another series of books.
Oh, so, that's interesting.
So I'm not really a writer, but I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, I can surely see that from the way you articulate your story. I mean, it naturally comes to you. I'm sure you're great at it. Now, to coming into what we can give to the public, to start writing a book is the hardest part for a lot of people, not for some, for a lot of people. They keep thinking about it, but they do not know how to start and from where to start. So how can someone as such align their thoughts to start writing a book, Sam? What advice, like step by step, if you could take us through?
Yeah. So the first thing is not to wonder what to write about. There are people who have written to me with the same question you have. Like they say, I want to write a book, what should I write? I don't know them from Adam. I can't tell them. But the only thing I can tell you is write what you know, or start with what you know. Everyone has a story somewhere. Okay. So let's say you're not a creative writer per se, but you have life experience. Then you can come up with what they call a non-fiction book. And there are lots of things that are non-fiction. History is non-fiction, anthropology is non-fiction. And if that is your domain, you can come up with an interesting take on many points of history. History is no longer as boring as it used to be. Today's writers of history are very interesting and they're very accessible. They're not strictly academic anymore. So you can sit there and read their book like a storybook. Peter Frankopan, William Dalrymple, all these people write in a very entertaining way. Okay, so you can go that way. And like I said, the range of books is enormous. You can think about a children's book. Maybe you have children, and like me, you tell them stories, and you think, and if they're original stories, or even if they're not, you think, yes, other kids might like to hear that story, and then you sit and write it down. Fiction. I love fiction. Some people tell me they don't read fiction. Fiction is boring. They like non-fiction. But I say with non-fiction, you have statistics, but you don't have feelings.
Yeah, that's right.
Like if we talk about the Sri Lankan Civil War, you can tell me so many casualties, numbers off the top of my head, right? You can say 100,000 dead, 50,000 wounded, 30,000 rapes, whatever. But you don't know what does rape feel like. Is it a nice feeling? Is it a nasty feeling? Is it a bad feeling? Does it leave you traumatized? If you're writing non-fiction, none of that comes in. But if you write fiction, or if you're reading fiction, then you go through what the victim went through, how it felt. Did it hurt? Was it unpleasant? Are you traumatized? All of those things come out in non-fiction. So I mean, the range of subjects you can write about is limitless. But okay, so that's a small gamut right there.
It's all about putting your pen, into, just start writing from wherever you think.
You put your pen to paper, yeah.
Putting your pen to paper.
Amazing. Do the free flow first, and then just refine your thoughts as you go along.
I think where this problem comes is, Sam, like a lot of us, when we start writing even an article or even a story, we think too much. We think too much about the final cut. We want it to be perfect. And I don't think, I personally have experience that's not the way to get started. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. I can't wait for perfection either. When it's about 90% ready, I think it's perfect. Having said that, everything that we publish is gone over in a very meticulous way. I don't like typos. I don't like grammatical errors. I don't like mistakes. I don't like you to pick up a book and say, Sam, I found a mistake here, or a factual error, or
that's
a typo, or whatever. I want you to tell me, Sam, this is as good as any book I picked up on my overseas travels or that I bought online.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I'm sure as a publisher, those are words that will make you definitely happy.
Yes, of course. That's a story I want to hear.
That's amazing. Now, once somebody gets started writing their own book or the story, now, will you be able to take us through on how to write a book? I think that's what a lot of people are in here for. As a publisher, what are the areas that you look into in a book? And as an author, what is the effort a person needs to put in and the process of writing and completing a whole book?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, we are not all of us are writers. So if you are a writer, it will come to you more or less naturally. But you shouldn't underestimate the value of feedback. Once you've written your story, don't feel shy to show it to someone in your entourage, your brothers, your sisters, your teachers, your friends, someone who will give you positive feedback. and not a Machang, this is fabulous. Someone who will tell you, Ashi, this is not really working, this is funny, or your timeline is all wrong, or this thing couldn't have existed, or in the 1930s, there's no way you could have sent a text message or a video call or something like that. Okay, so you've got to get your your grasp on reality also correct. So the first step, I think, is getting feedback from a lot of people. Many first-time writers think that once they've written their story, it's done. They don't need to look at that again. Then they can send it off to a publisher and get it published, and it'll be a book. And then thousands and thousands of people will buy it. But it doesn't really work that way. So I think the more people who see your book in an initial stage, the better it is for your book. Also, don't underestimate the value of editing. Editing, I think, is very important. Either by a professional editor or even an amateur editor. And by amateur editors, I mean like your English teacher at school, or I mean, if you're writing in Sinhala, then your Sinhala teacher in school, or Tamil teacher at school, or whatever. But someone who can look at it critically and tell you where you are going wrong. In any case, by the time you get to so if not, what happens is it becomes like a school essay, and you send it to me, and I can't get beyond the first page. And I will also tell you, Ashi, that's lovely, congratulations, but stick to whatever it is that you are doing. So then your effort falls a little flat, and then you've wasted all that time. So, so I think if you think you have a good story, you have to make it the best story possible. And in order to do that, get some feedback from other people first, and then get your work professionally edited.
Okay. So now, since you mentioned about getting the feedback from a lot of people, don't you think there might also be a conflict of thinking when it comes to, there's also a question the public or the writers who are aspiring to be would have. They write their story, they imagine that, let's say it's fiction, they go into their own world of imagination. But if you go to a lot of people to get a lot of feedback, won't there really be a conflict?
There could, because you have imagined this story. And of course, if you ask 10 different people, 10 different people might have 10 different ideas. But what you need to do is to sort out what advice is good and what advice doesn't work for you. And you take on board what you think will enhance your story.
I'm sure that's all about keeping your mindset right also as an author. Am I right?
Yes, of course. Yes. You can't have ego as an author.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, not until you're famous anyway. No? And even then, maybe you shouldn't have ego. In any case, you shouldn't have ego. I mean, as a publisher, I have no ego at all. And as a publisher, I am certainly not the star. The star is a writer.
That's right. Now, I think it's not about having ego. It's about, even after publishing the book, I have seen a lot of authors who write their books. They just wait to hear the feedback from the readers. And, that's when you know you're really successful. Not just because you publish a book, you're not an author. It's about, people reading and getting back.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Absolutely. So then that's where the feedback helps. So also now if you are into genres or whatever it is, if you like thrillers, and you want to write a thriller, I think you should read thrillers first. Not just any old thriller that you find on the pavement. But, read good writing and find the style that you like. And then perhaps either follow that style before you start developing your own. So all this is just for first-time authors, right? I think the more you write, the better you become at it, like anything else. And very soon you'll be writing away 500 pages a day.
Great. Now, with that, I would like to we spoke about how to get started, like how to put your pen into paper and get started with writing a book, and then how to, what are things that you need to think about when writing the book and getting it into a successful point or the final draft. Now, as a next point, Sam, I would like to ask the question now. Everybody would, after writing the first draft of the book, the very first thing they would want to do is to look for a publisher. And I'm sure choosing the right publisher after writing the book draft is an important decision. How should one reach out to a publisher after writing their book? And what are the things an author should consider when choosing the right publisher? Let's go into detail and talk a little bit about this.
So yeah, that's very good. So I mean, everyone today is so lucky because we have Google, and Google is your best friend. Okay, and I mean that really. You can ask Google whatever you like, and Google will tell you what you want to know. So you've written this book, and you want it published, and you think, who should publish my book? And it is not necessarily the publisher down your street. Okay, in other words, you shouldn't necessarily come to me. You should ask Google what is Sam publishing, or what is so and so publishing, and see whether that corresponds to what you have written. For example, much as I like poetry, I haven't been lucky with poetry. So when people come to me with poems, I tell them, listen, I'm not the best publisher for poetry, but there are poetry publishers. So again, like I said, Google will tell you who the poetry publishers are and how you can approach them. Okay, if you've written non-fiction, now just recently there's a very new publishing company that was formed called Tambapani, and they just released their first book. I'm going to show you that also. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's a bit gray, and maybe you can't see it. But if you've written academic work, I think you should approach someone like them. I only publish in English. So if you've written in some other language, I'm not the publisher for you. Now one of the books that we published recently was Amina's book on the 14th century Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta.
Ibn Battuta, that's right.
Yeah, and the book is doing very well here, and I'm trying to sell overseas rights at the moment. And I'm also trying to do a translation.
Okay.
But I have no expertise in translation. So I approached Sarasavi, whom you have heard of. And
Yes.
who have an excellent Sinhala language arm of publishing. And they very kindly agreed to translate and publish the book in Sinhala. So even I find the need to find another publisher for specific work.
Okay.
So in the same way, you might look at Sarasavi's English language range and think, okay, that suits me better than Pereira Hussein. Or you might think, no, I've written a fabulous story, and Pereira Hussein have been very successful with this type of story. I'm going to approach them.
Yeah.
Or poetry for poetry, children's books for children's books, etc. Now, even though I like to think that we are very, very small, we have published across a wide genre of books and been quite lucky with those.
That's amazing.
But the nonfiction that we do, I like to call non-academic nonfiction. In other words, so it's accessible nonfiction.
Okay.
So if you're writing something like that, then yes, I'm your publisher. Also interesting children's books, etc. I will look at everything. But for me, because we're a small publisher and I don't have a bookshop or anything like that, I rely on other bookshops to sell my stuff. Your book has to sell, or I have to think it will sell. And that's a gamble I'm willing to take if it is good.
Okay.
Again, so it has to be good.
All right. So that's the part of, I think, like I said, choosing the right publisher is very important. And I think once you write your book, it's so important to do your homework, to get your research done, to go into the right publisher as well. Now, coming into your experiences, Sam, I would like to ask you, just share, what would you like to share some amazing experiences of you being a publisher, or a book that you will never forget that you published?
I published hundreds of books. So
yeah, for sure.
And I like visuals, So even this one, Everest, which you may or may not have seen, the first two Sri Lankans on Mount Everest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nice, you say.
So this is about Jayanti Kurusumpala and
Jayanti and Johan Pires.
Johan Pires,
yeah. So I'm delighted to be their publisher also. I'm delighted to be everyone's publisher, really. Nihal Jinasena, who's probably the most successful business person in Sri Lanka.
That's a biography?
It's his memoir.
Okay.
And it's an amazing story. So he's someone who worked and played equally hard.
Okay.
And he was a lovely, lovely man. And I think he passed away a few years ago, but at the time he passed away, I think he was one of Sri Lanka's biggest exporters.
Okay.
And for a single company, that's phenomenal. And Nihal was a very, very simple, down-to-earth person. Amina and I have some land in Putlam, and we go to Putlam quite often from Colombo. And Nihal used to live in Jayala, and he said, listen, on your way up, why don't you just stop and say hello to us? And the first time I met him, he made a fabulous crab curry, which he himself made. So even though in economic terms he's a billionaire, he was not so highfalutin that he couldn't get his hands dirty and cook a meal for his guests.
Oh, okay.
So a very simple and lovely man.
Oh, okay.
Amazing. As was his wife. She's very beautiful and then also a very astute businesswoman.
Okay, amazing. Now coming into like I said, for the ones who are watching us live, the forum is open. You can send us questions. I will pick and choose according to the time limitations as well. So let us know the questions that you have now as we go into our final question for Sam. So Sam, what advice do you have for the writers who are aspiring to become authors and the ones who are already authors? What kind of advice have you got as a publisher?
Yeah, so the main thing is to be open to being edited. I think that is very, very important. That's a way of taking your book forward. So I mean, earlier I used to joke and say that I can elevate mediocrity to excellence, but you know what I mean. We can take something good and make it much better. Also, authors should not feel shy to promote their own book. In Sri Lankan terms, the market is very, very small. And I try to sell books overseas, but it's a constant uphill battle. Sometimes I'm lucky in that I've been able to sell international rights. Sometimes I'm lucky in that I can put books in overseas bookshops. But again, because of the pandemic, all of this is going retrograde at the moment. And I'm concentrating on the market here. In any case, Ashi, I target the Sri Lankan reader with our books. I want to publish books that you will buy, that our audience will buy.
Yeah.
I'm not targeting an imagined international audience. I'm targeting a very real Sri Lankan audience. And I also think the Sri Lankan audience is very discerning in how they spend their money and what they want to read. So I'd like to give them a good product. So the good product begins with you, with good writing. And that is what I want first from you, and then I will take it to the rest of the market from there.
That's amazing. Now, also I would like to ask your experience about international, like since you mentioned about it, I would like to ask, what is the process and what is your experience in taking a book to international? If people would like to know.
Very difficult. I'll tell you a true story. I mean, in the early days, when I took books, when I traveled, I would take books and go to bookshops or publishers, and then however nice a book is. Kumar Jawad, the international author, right? But they would hold the book up like this and say, "Oh, Sri Lanka, do you all do books? Where is Sri Lanka?" And it's very, very difficult. So that's another reason that our books have to be better than anything else.
Exactly.
Because so far, books come from the west to the east, but very little goes from the east to the west.
That's right.
So that's another thing I wanted to change. I'm sending books from the east to the west, and I've been lucky that we've been able to do that, and I'd like to make that grow. But all of you have to be my partner for that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will come in. Now, opening the questions, I would like to give the opportunity to the public to ask questions, and I think we have one question. If a new author has bits and pieces written or ideas for a novel but never got around to put them together in one book, what advice do you have in order to complete the work? Sam?
I think that the author has the answer right there. If you have bits and pieces,
put it all together.
Put it all together. I mean, it will make sense to you, and you're the only person who can make sense out of it. But once you have put it together, like I said, show it to someone else and say, does this make sense or not?
And also, we have another question. I would like to pick from all the questions that we received so that we remain within the time. Are there editors in Sri Lanka, and what about the charges? Rather than talking charges, let's talk about the affordability, Sam. How about the availability of
yes,
editors?
There are more and more editors in Sri Lanka. Their charges are not uniform. I think each editor will charge according to what they think their expertise is. A lot of the time in Sri Lanka, you might not recover the money you spend on editing. If I take your book on, further editing is free. It's all part of my service, and I hope to sell enough copies for me to cover. But whether I'm paying someone in-house to edit or whether I'm outsourcing the editing, with me you won't charge anything, or you won't be charged anything. But editing does have a cost. And yes, like I said in the beginning, your book will only benefit from editing. So it's money well spent, but whether you will recover the money or not is debatable. I mean, obviously, if you sell thousands and thousands of copies, it'll work.
Yeah.
If you only sell 100 copies, it won't work. But if it only sells 100 copies, then you know also that perhaps the book is not what the market was looking for. And like I said at the beginning of the conversation, publishing is a commercial venture. So we have to look at commercial success. The market is the decider. The market will decide whether you are good or not. I can't tell you whether you are good.
I think it's a risk that, like any other business in the commercial world, like you take the risk and you go forward and you try all ways that you can. And moving on, how many books in total? Do you have a count of books that you have published, Sam?
I was thinking about that the other day. I think we've done about 180 to 200 books, something like that. And most of them have been successful. I have had a couple that didn't sell, or I have had about 4 or 5 that didn't sell as well.
Oh, right.
But I managed to sell my print run. But after too long. I'd like to sell a few thousand copies in the first year.
Oh, nice. So I would.
So you have to tell, if I publish your book, you have to tell all your 5,000 Facebook friends, please buy a copy.
That's right. I mean, you have to do your own campaign at the end of the day, right? It's your book that's going out. Okay, I'll take the last question. I think you already have a writer who wants to get his or her, I think it's a her, to get her book published. So I think you can contact him separately and get it all going. And also, we have, out of all the books, what book has got the highest reach out of all the books that you have published?
Reach. So that's a tough question. How do you mean reach?
Probably best-selling.
Best-selling. So the best-selling book was one I did after the tsunami. It was called The Three Friends and the Best Wave, and Three Friends and the Big Wave. And it was to encourage children to get back into the ocean. Okay. But even though I sold lots and lots of copies, all the copies were sold in Sri Lanka. It was also translated into Japanese and Spanish and a couple of other languages, but I'm not sure how many copies sold. I did a book by an author called Naomi Munavira, and we sold the rights to an American company. The book did very well, so you can say the reach for that was also quite wide. And so when we published Naomi, she was an unknown writer. After that, she became known, and she got book offers from American companies, etc. So the reach has been different. And of course, Naomi's book was listed for lots of prizes. In a Sri Lankan context, Professor Garnath Ubesekara, who writes, who's an historian, superb writing, his books just keep selling. The subject matter that we are publishing at the moment is mainly Sri Lankan, so the main interest is in Sri Lanka, and he has a very wide reach in Sri Lanka. So yes, it varies. Difficult to say. Even these children's books I did with Alex, and they're not really children's books; they're really folk tales.
Okay.
Also have, I mean, they sold a lot of copies, so then we can put that down to a wide reach.
Okay.
We're having an online book sale at the moment.
Oh, okay. That's an amazing.
Offering about 30% off of everything. So get on to
on your
their
site,
website.
is it?
On our site.
Oh, that's amazing. So to everyone who's watching, that's an announcement. Go check the Farah Hussain site.
Free plug for myself.
Yeah, sure it is. So I think we have a little bit more questions. I would like to spend a little bit more time and take a few answers as well. Okay, let me pick and choose.
While you're waiting for a question, I'll show you something else. This is
sure.
Manjusri. Can you see the artwork? Fabulous Sri Lankan artist.
Oh, okay.
Right, and that's a coffee table type book, quite big. Another one we did, which we did during the pandemic, and I thought, my goodness, it might not sell because I had to price it at 7,500 rupees. But amazingly, the print run is almost sold out.
Okay, so moving on to the next question, Sam. We have a mother asking, my teenage son is contemplating on doing cartoon books. What's your advice to him?
He should persevere, but I will put in a little caveat right at the beginning. Even though I publish books for children, I don't publish books by children. Okay. So until you're about 21, I won't publish your work. But yes,
and they've also
so there are various types of cartoon books. So there are the Marvel type cartoons, and then what are the other books called? They're called graphic novels. Graphic novels are also fabulous, and the Japanese manga type books are also superb. So they all reach different market segments. And if your son is talented, I would encourage him to continue.
Okay, that's great. And they also have the question of, do you publish similar books? Do you publish books similar to Sherlock Holmes books? Do you publish?
I haven't so far, but if you are writing like that, and yes, I'd love to see thrillers. I want thrillers that will take you somewhere. So if you write like Stieg Larsson, for example, yes, send me your work, and I'd love to read it. Stieg Larsson is the Swedish writer, and I think they've sold millions of copies worldwide. So they address social issues as well as the thriller plot. So yes, if your writing is like that, yes, I'd love to publish them.
That's amazing. I think in the Q&A panel, we have so many asking for your contact details. We will share at the end before we wind up. Before that, let me take another question. So we have a question. If one is writing a collection of short stories, should one approach a publisher while some of the stories are still unwritten, or only after having finished the whole collection?
So various publishers will give you different answers. But if you're coming to me, send me the whole work. That makes it easier for me to decide. Also makes it easier for me to see whether all the stories are at about the same level. So let's say you have written 3 stories that are fabulous. You think you can write 8 stories that are fabulous, but I have no indication that you can. The first 3 stories will be good. And if they are uneven, then I will be waiting for your stories. You will be taking time doing it. Life happens. You'll be locked down or let out of lockdown. You'll say, oh dear, Sam, I don't have as much time anymore. So given that time is of the essence these days, I'd say finish the book first before coming to us or to me.
Okay.
But again, that's a very personal answer, right? Someone else might give you a different answer.
It differs from publisher to publisher, I guess. So here's Sam's answer. Now we also have another question. Who would you state as the top 3 authors or books for you in Sri Lanka? For you again. Top 3, if you have to choose, like top 3 best books for you.
That is so difficult. How can I answer that one? That's impossible. One of my favorite authors is this guy, Dr. Philip Veerasingham. He's a retired doctor, and he began life in Ratnapura and he began life in Ratnapura on a tea estate, I think, and ended up as a chief consultant surgeon in the Colombo General Hospital. And his books are very accessible, very chatty. But he himself, I think that trajectory is is in Sri Lankan terms almost like Barack Obama becoming president. You think, what are the chances? Born in Ratnapura on a tea estate and to end up as the chief consultant surgeon. So he's a superman, and his books are super. So I would put him close to number one.
I think that question is putting you in trouble to choose three. I think that's the hardest question. Out of all the books that you have read and published, probably to answer that is a little hard, right, Sam?
Yeah. So we'll leave that one out. So you got one answer. We'll leave the other two out.
We'll leave two. And we also have a guest asking, I would like to know whether, in your opinion, you think it's essential to have a time frame once you start writing a novel, or simply a lengthy one. So basically, it's about having a time frame when you start writing.
Yeah. So again,
how important is it?
I think many authors work differently. But I think if you have a story in your head, then I would set a time frame. Also, because today life is so busy. If you don't set a time frame, you're never going to finish it. It's going to be on a back burner. There's no pressure. You write a few lines when you can. And then you become like the author who asked the question earlier. I have bits and pieces. Now I'm not sure whether I can put it together, the story or not. Okay, so sit down and, in the extent possible, do it in one go. A few weeks, couple months, depending on how long you think your story is. But yes, set a time frame. That makes things easier. Definitely, when you come to me and I start the editing process.
I think not just when it comes to writing, but anything in life usually.
Yeah. Anything in life. If you don't set a time frame, then it's not important to finish, and it might never finish. So, and like I said, a quick job is a good job. So do it quickly.
A quick job is a good job. Way to go. And we also have a question of, can you recommend a few good editors in Sri Lanka? And also, do you also edit the manuscript if you agree to publish?
So the second part of the question I can answer. So yes. However good your work is, I'm a bit of a compulsive editor. So yes, it will see some editing. There's nothing I have looked at and thought this is perfect as it is, except perhaps for two international authors, Chimamanda Adichie and David Mitchell. I love both of their writing, and I think every word is perfect. But I'm sure they would have gone through an editing process also in some way. Okay, so yeah. Apart from that, if I see your work, I will definitely edit it. But I can't recommend editors. I don't know enough about them. And like I said, you have to find an editor who suits you, not an editor who suits me.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure for advice, if you reach out to Sam, he will advise you on everything in process. If you want to know all about editors, about him and his work.
Like I said, Google is your friend.
Google is your friend. Yes, do the research. Okay, I would like to take a few more questions as we have more people engaging. Can you elaborate more on a book should be good? How do you measure it? How do you measure and how do you really say a book should be good? Is there any criteria as a publisher?
So all of this is very, very subjective, and more than good, I look at whether it is marketable.
Yeah, sure it is.
Yeah, and like I told you, the audience that I'm targeting first is a Sri Lankan audience. So I will wonder, will a Sri Lankan audience take to your book or not? And if I think it will, then I will publish that one. If an international audience also takes to your book, then I will be truly delighted and think, yes, that's like icing on the cake. But the cake is here. So yes, it's all subjective. But I won't start the reverse way and think, okay, I'm going to sell this book in America or the UK or Australia or India or whatever. I'm first trying to sell the book here. So if you're writing about blue-eyed children who are in a dappled meadow.
Now, I think, okay, like one more question I will go ahead with. I think there was a slight connection issue. Am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Am I? Okay. Okay. These technical errors, I think it's out of our control. We tend to face it here and there. With that, I would like to take the last question. We have a guest asking, I'm an amateur writer and I'm working on a YA romance, like a Meg Cabot novel based in Sri Lanka. But I'm a bit discouraged because I think this genre is quite mistreated. Can I have some advice on this? Should I finish the book and forward it to a publisher? Will it be worthwhile because of the prejudice around the genre?
So so that's a big question. So the first thing to do, again, like I said, you have to do research. So the first step is you go to a bookshop and you ask the bookseller, does Meg Cabot sell or not? And if the bookseller tells you no, Miss Meg Cabot doesn't really sell in Sri Lanka, then you know that Sri Lanka is not the place to market your book. Whether at that point it is worth finishing the book or not is up to you. Or you finish the book and you target an international audience. And with an international audience, you also have to find yourself perhaps an international agent who will shop your book around. Because you yourself might have limited access to international publishers. But you have a better chance with an agent. So I mean, especially if you're targeting an international audience, you should have an agent. In Sri Lanka, the market is quite small and you can approach publishers yourself. I am very accessible. You can even phone me up and say, Sam, I've written a book. But yes, so if you're going to take your Meg Cabot book somewhere else, then I'd consider finishing the book, finding an agent, or you can start the process before, find an agent. Again, the same way you find a publisher is how you find an agent. You look to see who is representing Meg Cabot, and you find a similar agent to that.
Okay. I hope that answered your question to the guest who asked. So now a lot of people are asking for your contact details. Would you like to share it on public here? Your email address for people to reach you and all the contact details. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, so the website is www.pererahussain.com. And my email is quite simply sam@pererahussain.com. I can give my phone number, but I hardly answer my phone. But it is 777-572-999. So you're better off writing to me.
Yeah, I'm sure writing is more comfortable. I mean, that's the way everybody gets through to you, right?
Yeah. On
official format. So get through to him through the email address mentioned. Would you like to mention it once again? Because we have so many people asking.
Yeah, so it is Sam, S-A-M, @pererahussain.com.
Sam@pererahussain.com is his email address. So you can get in touch with the talented or one among the best publishers in Sri Lanka and get your advice and get your books published.
If you can't remember pererahussain.com, you can go to Google and say who is the best publisher in Sri Lanka, and you will find me in any case.
Definitely. That's exactly what I also did. That's exactly what I also did before the interview. Went and Googled, and there you came, on sites and newspaper articles to everything. Then I knew, oh, wow, I am having a chat with him today. So with all of that said, we've come to the end of today's episode on Thrive from Home. Thank you for this amazing conversation. It was very friendly having this conversation and you're sharing your insights, your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it was lovely being on Pick a Book again. And best wishes for the rest of the lockdown. Since you are going to be locked down, get onto our website and buy yourself a book that is on sale right now, all month, 30% off all month.
Get into reading, get into writing books, and get your habits going, because I think this is the best time you can spend with your family and invest yourself in something good like reading, writing, some activity that will take you a long way in life. So with that, I would like to mark the end of today's session of Thrive from Home. This episode of Thrive from Home was brought to you by Pick a Book Sri Lanka in association with Perera Hussain Publishing House. And as the official event partner, we have One Golf Fair. So thank you so much to the partners, and thank you to the ones who joined with us live and got engaged with so many questions. And apologies because there were so many questions loading up, but I'm sure most of the questions were answered during our conversation initially. And if you have any more inquiries and concerns, please get in touch with Sam. through his email address. And even if with Pick a Book, if you have any questions, get in touch with them. We shall see you soon with another episode of another great webinar series. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good evening. Stay home.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye. Stay safe.